Johnny and Justin were two simple Imagineers at Disneyland until they dared to ask the question,
Hey Justin, is Disney diverse?
Well, Johnny, I'm not.
Oh no, we've angered the mouse!
Stormtroopers, run!
Holy crap, it's a gaggle of cookies!
Now, from undisclosed locations within the Disney park, Johnny and Justin record a podcast where they seek to answer the question, is the Disney catalog diverse?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of Disney+Diversity. I'm Johnny.
I'm Justin.
As you know, here on Disney+Diversity, we review the Disney catalog to talk about how diverse and inclusive it actually is. And on today's episode, which is a very special episode for Asian American Pacific Islander Month, we have a very special guest. But let me tell you about them really quickly. So on today's show, we are proud to welcome an accomplished teacher, writer, and most importantly, role model. In her journey as an accomplished author, she has been open about her sexuality and mental health, which influences many of her works, like her hit young adult series, Sidekick Squad, or a Rainbow Award-winning novel, Seven Tears at High Tide. But her works don't stop there. Our guest has also written for acclaimed properties like Ben 10 and Star Wars, just to name a few, and has a new novel coming out this fall, A Clash of Steel, being released September 7th, 2021. And while she regularly denies this, many insiders speculate that Kawhi Leonard left San Antonio after reading Not Your Sidekick and decided to venture out to be his own hero. So please welcome acclaimed author and the reason Toronto now has a championship, C.B. Lee.
Woo! Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you for giving Toronto that ring. Woo! Again, y'all, she denies it. She denies it all the time, but we know the truth. We know the truth.
Woo, okay. Thank you so much. Now, before we go on, I think we might as well just do this first. Normally, we kind of hold off on this little question, but like, what is a personal favorite Disney property that you like? It could be food, movie, TV show. Like, what's your personal favorite Disney thing?
Kim Possible.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Oh, so good. Such a great choice. Such a great choice.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Okay, you got to give us a stitch. Tell us why.
Because it's fun, and it like Kim gets to be feminine and a badass, and like a lot of it is like it relies on her like network of friends. Like every episode there's like she's like, oh, thanks for the ride, Christina Aguilera, and like she's like, no problem, like you helped me that one time, and like every random person that she's ever helped remembers her, and then like her best friend Ron, the naked mole rat, the nachos, the like it's very like fun and delightful, and like I remember watching it like all the time, and just you know, it's got a lot of like larger than life situations, but she's also like gets to be a normal teenager, and that's what like I think is the heart of like being like fun like Disney superhero.
Super dope. Yeah, no, she's awesome, and I love that show. Like one of my favorite episodes. Do you remember the one where they go to Japan? But Ron goes to Japan like in the previous season, and he's like a hero there. He's doing all this cool stuff. He's like the chosen one. The following season, Kim goes with them. She's like, "What the heck is going on?" Because Ron's actually being capable and all this stuff there. I was like, I love this show. It's so good. But I totally agree with you. Such a great, strong female like representation. Like one of my favorite villains, She-Go, is from that show. And
I love She-Go.
So awesome,
and like
so awesome.
Every single villain on that show is just like fun over the top. Like there's no hesitation on like oh my god, there's that one villain who's like obsessed with Beanie Babies.
Oh yeah.
But and it's just it's not afraid to be like cheesy.
Not at all.
So like that's part of like every episode, you know, you're in for a good time. And yeah, that's one of the things I love about it.
Super dope. So wait, speaking of like superheroes, you also write a dope superhero series yourself, your novel series, Not Your Sidekick, which by the way I love is right behind you, which I love.
Yeah.
Check out the bookshelf, y'all. Look at that. That's how you market, everybody. That's how you So wait, just talk us up really quickly, let people know. So what's the series about, and like how'd you come up with the idea for it and everything?
Yeah, it's about a group of friends. Like it's basically queer teens take on a corrupt government superhero agency, and so there's like friendship, there's there's some romance and their crushes, but there's a lot of flying robots and shenanigans. Basically, it takes place in like the 22nd century and like in a post-dystopian world. So there's like hovercraft and like a lot of green tech, but there's also not a perfect world. Like there's a very overbearing government that like controls everything and information, and superheroes are kind of viewed as like celebrities. So there's a lot of like my takes on like celebrity culture and consumerism, and but at the heart of it, it's just like a group of friends who uncovers this like terrible truth and basically start like a resistance movement.
Oh, that sounds super awesome. That sounds dope. It's giving me low key like My Hero Academia meets like Hunger Games vibes in a way. And that's all to say that people should go read it. Y'all should go read it. Go check it out.
So I have a question, CB. Like, it sounds like you have a lot of like interest in stories about like teen heroes. And what do you think is it about telling a heroic story through teenagers do you find appealing to you?
I feel like it's such a pivotal time, and I remember being a young person and a lot of adults also relate to these stories, because a lot of these issues you never stop like going through, and it's very relatable. But a lot of things that happen when you're teenagers, like your first time experiencing, like everything happens so much, like everyone is telling you like you need to define who you are, you need to tell us what you want to do for the rest of your life. And you're feeling a lot of like pressure to be that and to define that. And a lot of people are like figuring out like who are my real friends? Where do I fit in? Like what am I like? What's my personality like? And so they try on like different, and you throw like superpowers on top of that, and it's a great way to tell a story about identity. And there's a lot of room for like, and it's also just fun, like, and I think every teenager has that desire to be like everyone is the hero of their own story, and like to have a vehicle where you get to tell that story. And like part of the reason why I started writing my books, and like the main reason, like all of the books that I have are like, these are for kids like me. Like when I was a teenager, I didn't really see myself in a lot of media growing up getting to be like the main character, like if I saw an Asian kid or a queer kid, like they were almost always like the sidekick, or like, a best friend, or just there in the background. And so writing a story where I wanted like kids from these backgrounds, kids who felt the same way I did, kids who might identify in that spectrum, to be like, what, I can be a hero. I can take control of my own narrative.
Perfect, because this leads into our film today. These themes, the stuff that interests you. It's part of the even reason why we're excited to have you on this episode, because it does feel like it sort of fits into the kind of storytelling you enjoy and write. So yes, let us talk about our movie today, which is Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior, a Disney Channel original film. Might I add, the only live action movie we're actually covering this month. And
just this month, or like in the whole history of,
for this month of the our Asian American Heritage Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It's the only live action movie we're covering. We've done almost all entirely animated films, so this is actually kind of a unique one to point out and talk about. This movie came out in 2006. So
2006, okay.
Yeah.
When we were prepared to do this month and we were going through properties, we were genuinely worried, like, we might only be able to do one of these months. Like, this season make things with more Asian people in it. But thankfully, we found this and we found some other stuff. So, and again, as Justin said, we're really excited to talk about it with you. So, Justin, tell us about it really quick. What's the movie about?
Really quickly, the simple synopsis, it's about a California teenager who learns that she is a reincarnation of a legendary female warrior destined to protect the world. And, it's got a little bit of a Buffy-ish, vibe-ish, but for kids thing going on here. Hilariously, the movie takes place in California, but it's entirely filmed in New Zealand. New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
The film stars Brenda Song of Sweet Life and Zack and Cody fame, Shin Koyamada, who I remember mostly from The Last Samurai, a young Justin Chong before he got on to be in the Twilight films and several other films, and the legendary actress Sai Chin from Joy Luck Club, if you probably remember from that. So, and a couple other actors we'll probably talk about throughout who have like a couple of nerdy connections that me and Johnny are fully aware of. So what's everyone's first exposure of this film? How did you hear about it before?
So this came out when I was in high school, or like just around that time. And I remember watching it. And when you first asked me about this podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And I vaguely remember its existence, but I didn't remember anything that I thought about it. Like, I don't remember having, and and it, you know, it came out at a time when I wasn't like as a kid or like a very young teen, like actively consuming a lot of like Disney content or movies that like, you know, movies that like meant a lot to me because they, you know, I watched them at a very specific age. But this was kind of like, I was a little older and I was doing my own thing. But at the same time, I did watch it and I remember like, oh, cool, it's a movie. And so rewatching it was interesting because it felt like a lot like watching it for the first time, because like I just had no memory of watching for the first time. But I remember Brenda Song more from her role from Sweet Life with Zack and Cody. So I think that was definitely like before this movie, right? Or during, or that's kind of where she got her Disney start.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Low key same. Like I saw this back when I was like, I saw it for the first time, like getting ready for this podcast. And I remember when it was like, they were talking about Disney Channel. I remember it was like kind of a big deal. And I was like, looks all right. But again, I kind of like, when I saw the title, Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior, I was like, it feels kind of cheesy, whatever. But I was a huge Brenda Song fan because again, used to love some Sweet Life and Zack and Cody. Yay me.
London, what did you want to be when you were little?
I wanted to be an heiress. And I did it.
Yay me.
Yay me. Best catchphrase ever. And so, but going into watching this for the first time, I gotta say, like, there's a lot of things I like about this film. And I'm interested to see what y'all have to say, because there were parts of where I was like, ooh, think that's racist. And there are other parts where I was like, man, grandma be dropping these wisdom bombs on us right here. It's just like quotables. And so it's kind of a mixed bag, but again, I'm happy it was made and I'm excited to talk about it with y'all today.
Yeah, I had a similar feeling. Like I was kind of already well past the age of just sort of paying attention to Disney stuff, especially at this point. But I think I do remember walking in a mall, seeing the poster for this and going, okay, sure. You know, like, and I even consider, like, I'm kind of a like obsessive martial arts movie watcher. So I did go like, I might try that just to see how they do it. But I never saw it. But there was one person involved in the making of this movie that caught my attention, that I found that he worked on it. And I'm like, I might watch it one day because of his involvement. And that's the fight choreographer, whose name is Koichi Sakamoto. I'm a massive nerd on this guy. This is like a deep cut nerd fandom. This dude is famous for being the fight choreographer Power Rangers, which makes a lot of sense when we're talking about this movie. Power Rangers, and then he went on to be one of the top directors in Japan for Japanese superhero shows like Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, and Ultraman. So, and I know his fighting style. It's very distinct. So you're watching the fight scenes of Wendy Wu, and you've seen some later Power Rangers seasons. Some fans might go, I recognize this style. So...
Oh no, I was one of them. Like totally, like literally did not know any of this. Like did not know until I started watching the movie. Literally saw the first martial arts sequence, was like, this is Power Rangers. This is Disney Power Rangers, in fact. Like total vibes, the martial arts sequence, everything like that. And when I say that, that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. Because trust me, you heard me go off on Iron Fist, that terrible show. This was such a great improvement, a great martial arts scene. So all in all, again, I wasn't hating on it. I just was able to recognize it. Sorry, continue, Justin.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's fine. I'll add to that. Every fight scene in this movie is better than every fight scene in Iron Fist. So I'm just gonna straight up say that. So yeah, no, it's so I never got around to it. So part of me was like kind of excited for us to cover it this month, because like it's one of those fun things where like I have an excuse I have an excuse to go like, all right, let me see how it goes. And even I was surprised when I was watching this, it sort of reminded me a lot of Johnny Tsunami to a certain degree.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like it's storytelling's kind of similar, but then there's elements of both scripts where I'm like, hey, that's actually not bad. Like there's some decent stuff that they do in the screenplay. The dialogue needs some work, but there's some story stuff here. I went, hey, that's actually kind of not bad. And I started imagining, what if they had a bigger budget? What if they had a better director who kind of knew how to film all this stuff with kind of a flair and excitement? This probably would have been an even better movie, even with the same script, you know. But at the same time, for what's here, hey, it's pretty watchable. I was legitimately surprised, like how much I was like totally fine watching it. I'm kind of been feeling like that with every Disney Channel movie we've been watching. I come in with excruciatingly low expectations because I figured I'm 37. What would I find enjoyment in these movies? And then I watch it and went, okay, I'll shut up. I found enough enjoyment in these movies to be like, okay, well, I'll turn off my cynical brain for about 90 minutes and be totally fine with it. So, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you too, though, because it's interesting as we've been doing this podcast. It's just funny, like when we review the bigger budget Disney movies, sometimes it feels like they play it like extra safe because they don't want to take a stance on everything. But when we review these like made for TV movies, it's like they're almost given more freedom and actually allowed to have a message, which has been totally cool here. Because like with this movie, again, there's a lot of messages here about like, I feel like, you know, about holding on to your identity and like valuing your past, your culture, where you come from, that they're putting here, which is like you don't really see in a lot of the mainstream stuff Disney does. And what's crazy though is how successful it was too, because when it premiered, it had 5.7 million viewers on the Knives premiere, which is a huge success. It was the 5th highest viewed Disney Channel original movie at the time, and it broke records in the United Kingdom and in Japan when it first premiered, and people loved it. But I get back to the question, we'll get to that later on as we wrap up. It's like, why didn't this get a sequel? If it was so good and was doing so great things, why did it ever get a sequel? And we'll probably get to that as we get more into the movie.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a solid movie, and I enjoyed watching it, and I definitely remember like definitely enjoyed it as like a teenager, but also like as an adult looking, and also as a writer now looking at the beats here, I'm like, oh, there are a lot of like nuggets here that I would love to see more of. And I can see what like either one of the writers or maybe someone was trying to do, because there's so much you can say about like, what does it mean to be a Chinese American? What does it mean to like Wendy is in the film, she is a 3rd generation, and her parents are like, oh, we don't know what she might get out of this visit, at the time when they believe that Shen is a cousin, and like her mom immigrated from China, and so the parents, and it was kind of questionable too, comes like the parents reference like, oh, we didn't, I was like, did you know each other as kids? This is questionable. Also, whose mom is the grandma? Like and then you don't know until it's like, okay, it's her mom's mom. But like there's a lot of layers here that I could tease out as like, because there's so many stories about like being like a 1st gen or a 2nd gen and not having a connection to your culture. And I really liked like the small conversations we got to see from the parents who were like, oh, I didn't get to have a connection with this, you know, history when I was a kid. Like although the first thing I was like, the mom's like a museum curator. I'm like, why do you not know the history of your stuff? But like, she's like going more into like, she's like, oh, okay, she's done the research, but she doesn't know like the legends behind it. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. But like the scene where like, you know, they're having dinner with Shen for the first time, and then the dad gets really upset and he like walks away. And it, to me, that felt like it came right after the moment when grandma says like, oh, it's Chinese, you wouldn't understand. And then he visibly gets hurt, right? Yeah. But they never touch on that. And it comes back to this like weird moment where he's like reminiscing about mooncakes, which felt weird to me also, because I'm like, no one makes mooncakes. I've never met anyone who ever made their own mooncakes. This is a very elaborate process. There are like machines for that. People make these. It's like, like you have to take like you have to fry the dough 1,000 times, and like I don't even know how to make it. I don't know anyone who knows how to make it. I'm sure there are people who do, which is great, but I'm like, I feel like that's like an advanced chef thing. That like if you could go to a store and buy it, like yes, people like it's not like a, I don't know. It felt to me like a strange reading that, you know, someone was like, oh, you know what's Asian? Mooncakes. You know what we're doing? We're doing the autumn lunar festival. They should have mooncakes. And then we're going to say the word mooncakes multiple times, and then grandma's going to invite everyone back to their house to have mooncakes. But like, so that seemed like an interesting food choice to me, but it's not terrible. Like, it's not wrong, but it didn't feel to me like they had like an Asian American writer in the room who would be like, why are we doing this? And like the scenes with the parents and like also Wendy herself, like there's not, I would have loved to see more about like, well, what does it mean that like she doesn't know Chinese? What is it like? How do the parents feel when they don't speak Chinese? And like how do they feel like I could see the threads where the grandma's watching like a soap opera and the dad's like, why don't you watch something in English? And like there's a lot of there's entire storylines here that I think could be told, and that's not entirely the story that they're telling, right? But it is part of like what you could like. There's so much potential here, right? And I don't know, you know, in the filmmaking when you're like, I have this movie pitch and I want to make this, and I you have you know limited screen time, limited pages in which to do it. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I think it was I was like, okay, so Brenda Song is Korean and the main love interest he's Japanese, and they're both playing Chinese characters, and it's an interesting choice. I don't begrudge any actor for taking a role for which, you know, as a young actor you take roles to perpetuate your career, and you know you make choices to like, and sometimes these are the only roles that are offered to you. And I feel like things are changing and starting to change, but you know, if this film were made today, I think there would be more, I hope that people would pay more attention to like, not all cultures are interchangeable. And, you know, it would have meant a lot to see like an entire cast of like, you know, actors, but also like, it is cool to see so many different like people from like AAPI backgrounds. But then not having them be recognized. I'm like, okay, you have Brenda Song, you have a script, why not write it about a Korean American family? Right, and then you can still have this like legend. You can have Shen, okay, now you have the actor, he can be Japanese, like that could be I don't know, there's a lot of choices.
You're totally,
I totally right. I as much as I was enjoying the movie, I 100% agree. It's like and that's kind of a thing that I think Hollywood is slowly, I'm with you. I think Hollywood's slowly kind of figuring that out. Like they're slowly going, okay, maybe don't just, you can't swap one Asian culture for another depending on the actor. Because yeah, no, I feel like, yeah, it was kind of bothering a little bit that like Chen was, I know that guy is a Japanese actor. I know Shin's is a Japanese actor. So it kind of, there's this one scene where he's talking to grandma and she's speaking to him in her native language and he's speaking it back, but then it's like, I can tell that's natural for her.
Yeah.
I can absolutely tell that's not natural for him. You know? So things like that, I love that you really zoomed in on the mooncake because that is 100%. I guarantee you that's exactly what they did. There's only one Asian writer out of the 4 in this movie. And I don't know when that writer...
There was an Asian writer.
Okay. I don't know when he showed up.
There was one, yeah.
I don't know if he was in the beginning or if he was at the end. You know what I mean? Like how many what draft he joined in on. But I totally think something like as detailed as the mooncake is such a funny thing to me because if I can bring up a movie similar that had a similar reaction, it was of all things Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Rob Schneider is half Filipino, and so there's a scene where, as like you know, like they throw in the fact that his character is half Filipino. So there's a scene where someone's like trying to connect with the dad, and it's like, hey, I bought you your favorite, and it's like, oh my god, raspberry babinka. And I'm sitting there going like, that's not a thing. I've never had that. I've never heard of that. I want to point out that sounds delicious. And I would make one just to try it out. But that's not a thing. I've never been to a Filipino restaurant or a bakery and or something that went, oh, look at that beautiful raspberry bebinka that I grew up with. Like, no, I've never heard of that. So when you're bringing up the fact there's a process to mooncakes, which I didn't know, but I'm laughing as you're pointing it out because I'm like, no, that sounds right. And it does sound like somebody went, oh, mooncakes, they make mooncakes. That's 100% what it is.
Or
Now
like,
that being, go ahead.
like there's enough of it that feels like they did like some research, or like they asked this one guy, and it's hard, like I understand being in the writer's room, and I think this is something that people pay attention to. Like, it's not enough to have like one writer of color in your writer's room, because then this person has the pressure to be like, hey, I want to speak up about this thing, but then I'm the only writer, or I'm the youngest writer, or I'm the most unexperienced and I don't have anyone to back me up. It's like being the only woman in a boardroom where suddenly like you have to represent everyone. And so I can understand there's a lot of pressure for that person too.
Right.
And what is, and just the dissonance of that is that like, that's something like my family would eat mooncakes around in the autumn and during the Lunar New Year festival and for any other like special occasion. But it was something that we purchased from the store, or people gave to us, right? People would go and buy them and bring them to us, and you would like visit people's houses and you would bring them mooncakes, and it's like a nice special thing, and it's very rich and decadent. And also like seeing them just like eat huge chunks of it like that, I was just like, what are you doing? Like, that's a very rich dessert.
Yeah.
Like, it is like you take a little sliver and then you like bite, because it's like so decadent. It's like it is a deep fried sesame oil, like it's great. It's all like that pastry, right? But it's very dense. And it's like there's like, you know, like the salted egg inside, or like sesame seed bead paste, and like anyways.
No, but I totally get it. No, and I kind of want to add to what you're bringing up with like, there is such good nuggets, and I do agree. I love, this is one of the rare like third generation stories we've seen. You know, like I've seen a lot of second gen stories, and the idea that like to explore like a third gen story is fascinating. But I totally agree with you about the mooncake scene with the parents, where I feel like there's something there where I'm like, you're on the right track to something to explore, but you're not quite there. But I can see the effort being put to try to like explore the parents a little bit more than just simply we're the mom and dad of the story, you know?
No, exactly.
Right. And it felt like they were giving them interchangeable identities, or like both the parents, like did y'all grow up together? Are you siblings? Like, I'm not feeling like it feels like also like, how did y'all meet? You had different, and obviously the clear, like the dad's in marketing and the mom is like a museum curator. So the mom's journey is very interesting too, because she, you know, whatever journey she had where she was just like, oh, like I reject my heritage, but now I am immersed in it as a historian, right? That's very interesting. And there's a lot of really great, I think, foundational pieces of the script. And I'm glad that exists. I'm glad it got made. And you know, I think for the time, like 2006, like there's a lot of like I don't know, when you say like, oh, how does this film, like, is this film being intentionally like what are the intentions behind it, right? And like I'm like, okay, cool, we get to see like an Asian American hero, and we get to see like a family, and we get to see like nuanced like family dynamics, and that's cool. I do think like, I feel like Brenda Song's character in Sweet Like of Zach and Cody did more to like subvert Asian American stereotypes than because this one I'm not sure what, like the writing felt like disjointed to me, right? Just in terms of her character arc, because it was like, okay, we're making this whole huge thing about like her huge desire is to become homecoming queen, and she's like popular and she has everything, she has friends and she has a boyfriend, and she doesn't like there's, I don't get a sense of like who Wendy is,
right?
And why she cares about homecoming so much. Like, what does it mean to her to get this crown? Like, what expectations has she put on herself? Is like she a perfectionist? Is she like, you know? And then she like stumbles. Like there's such a like, you know, I can see the elements of like, we're gonna do some hero's journey stuff where she rejects the destiny, and then she's just like, oh no. but then she's like, oh no, I'm going to use part of this to get to ace my history test. But we don't even get to see like what does she do? Does she enter like the avatar state and like get to commune with all her past selves? And like, oh yeah, what happened to you back in like this year? And then, okay, that's the answer on this test.
Low-key, I did make a note though that meditation scenes were hilarious. Though it was like, you have to meditate, and by meditating you'll learn. I was like, I don't think it works like that. But I was dying laughing though when they kept showing her meditate in different places.
Yeah.
On top of the desk, in the cafeteria, I'm like, nobody say anything about this? Comedy genius. But no, I agree with you though. Because throughout the movie though, it's like there's points where it's like they're trying to embrace the heritage and show you that you should value the past. Like there was that dope scene where the grandmother's like talking to the daughter about the history, and she's like, well, you know, I don't really feel like I need this stuff or whatever. And then the grandma says, a note to her, she says, just because you don't miss it doesn't mean it's missing. It's not missing. Which I was like, oh shit, damn, grandma. Okay, I see you. And it was like a really dope connection right there, like to the past. But at the same time, though, there's a rejection of like the culture that happens as well. You see that with Shin when they take him on the mall shopping scene. It was like, we have to change you so you fit in here. And so there's this really interesting push and pull that's happening in the movie, where they're trying to figure out like exactly what do they want to do. Do they want to tell the story about like valuing your past, your heritage, where you come from, and incorporating that? Or are we trying to reject it in a way? And so there's this push and pull that seems to be going on throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
Right. Like people are constantly making fun of Shin for like his outfit, his hairstyle. And then like as soon as he gets a makeover, everyone's like, oh my God, he's so hot. He's so cool. And I did enjoy like at the party scene where he's dancing and he's incorporating martial arts into his dancing, because that's like part of where he's coming from. He's like, oh, I'm comfortable here. And now people are enjoying me and my like it is taking my history and incorporating into something new. So that's something that I feel like is very intrinsic in like an immigrant identity, like a second gen Asian American identity, where you are not quite, you are an outsider in your own, you know, technically home country. Like you feel like I don't feel comfortable in like I feel like a foreigner in China or in Vietnam, and I don't. And I also feel like a foreigner sometimes in America. Like, and you know, you're at this push-pull where you're not enough of one or the other, and you're not like, you're not Asian enough, you're not American enough. And I think there's also a distinct moment where like, I'm like, oh, is Wendy and her brother the only like Asian kids in this high school? Because that's a specific experience too.
Like,
where her friends were like, oh, you know what would be a cute like idea? We'll write your name on these chopsticks. And Wendy's like, oh no, don't do that. And like so her friends have this perception of her, and they don't see her as like, they don't see her as a person of color because they don't think about it, right? But she thinks about it, right? As part of, obviously there's a play here. If you're the only person that looks like you at your high school, and then you formulated an identity for yourself as like, you know, I don't know, I have a whole like, there's a ways you can definitely make this character super interesting and fascinating. You know, like it's lonely at the top, like you're like at the top, you know, you're super popular, but how well do your friends actually know you? And so like then you can play more into like why she feels so connected to Shen. Also, huge mistake introducing him as her cousin.
Yeah,
so weird.
Because you're doing a romance thing with them. Then once this story's over, how do you explain what Shen's deal is?
Right. Then it's just like you have played yourself. Like why? Like you.
I feel like that's a story note that went so far in development that no one caught it. No one caught it.
Oh, this would be a great way to explain why he's here. Just pretend that he's a cousin. I'm like, yes, but you also have this whole storyline where she subverts thousands of years of destiny and reincarnation history to save him. Like, you know, this is the first time that Yang Lo, the villain, has appeared in person. And what has changed is because this is the first time Wendy has a connection with her. Like that's a very beautiful storytelling trope, especially in like Chinese mythology, that like two lovers are fated to always end in tragedy. Like that's so beautiful that like they will meet again in another life, and one will forget all memory of the other, and yet the other will spend their entire life like searching for them. Like I love that trope. That's one of my favorite like mythology tropes, and like the thread of like, you know, people having their bond being so strong that they will find each other in the next life is so beautiful and touching, and you know that it's a romantic trope, right? And you know that that's where you're going with this, and then you do this whole, you know, and so there's no like, there's no big damn kiss at the end, right? And obviously as a Disney movie, there's like limited ways where they do that, but they do that. You know, we had a kiss in High School Musical, and there have been kisses in other like Disney Channel like movies, because they clearly set up like there's romantic expectations, and so you never get one. You get like she saves his life, they hug, and then end scene.
Yeah. No, but it was weird.
Awkward ending, by the way. The movie feels awkwardly edited.
Do y'all remember what happens though? Because it was kind of weird, because like they're like, everyone's like, oh, let's go to a house for mooncakes. So everyone goes this way. She's like, we're gonna go this way, and they go back to like the back. I'm like, the fuck are they doing? Like they have to go off screen to kiss. Like the hell's going on right here?
Johnny, they're getting frappuccinos. It's normal.
They're getting coffee, right?
They're getting coffee. It's innocent. It's innocent. The back is easy. I don't know why they went that way.
But I was gonna say real quick, because I agree with you, because like with a lot of these plot threads, there's so much that they introduce, but they don't exactly like explore like you want them to. Like going back to the dad and the parents, it was really interesting the way they kept rejecting their history and their Asian culture. But again, I feel like there's something they could do, because it reminded me of like Fresh Off the Boat. There's this dope episode where they talk about where the parents talk about growing up in the 80s and how like everyone wanked chunk tonight, stuff like that, and they had to deal with these racist stereotypes, and they had to deal with that, and that kind of made them like reject their Asian culture to some degree or whatever. The dad talked about it. So when the dad cracks a joke here, I was like, oh shit, yeah, the 80s were kind of a terrible time because of that, and then those other stereotypes we're seeing in movies. But again, they don't explore it. They kind of, like you said, they drop the nuggets and you want them to go more in depth with it, but they never do. And there's also these weird microaggressions that keep popping up. Like you brought up the great point about the chopsticks. I put that on my nose. I was like, the hell? No, don't do that. And then later on, there's a point where they're like, Shin's at the party, like, do you know Yao Ming? I was like, this is some bullshit. This is some bullshit. And so there's all these things that keep happening. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, I feel like I want to add to the Shen conversation. I think you brought up a really interesting point, CD, about the idea that like, while like this movie explores one of the rare kind of second and third generation kids. Shen does represent the immigrant kid, the kid who is quite literally fresh off the boat to a certain degree, and there is a story to be told there. There is absolutely to be a story to be told there. The idea that he has a tradition that he's trying to uphold, but he's out of touch with Wendy's life, and he starts getting into that world a little bit. There's a story there. But, they kind of stuck with him doing the Obi-Wan stuff, like you have to do this, or he's not even, that's an insult to even Obi-Wan. He's I feel like it's just the standard, like I'm the master monk character who has all the exposition and you have these duties and etc. And I feel like that's an unexplored area, even though I feel like there are moments where the character has a little bit of levity here and there. I kind of feel like all the fun stuff they do with him, like having him sit on top of the van and having a fly hit his head, which it's funny, in the script, I can see how the script is structured where I feel like that could have even been more like cleverly shot, where he's on top of the van, then he has like a fly hit his head, and it cuts to Wendy with like cake on her head, like a little cake batter. And I went, gosh, I wish someone.
Right. Are they psychically connected? Is their bond so strong that like similar things will happen to them and they'll be like, oh, like
I feel like if they filmed that better, that would have came off way clearer. But like you said, yeah, exactly. That's what it is. That's why I thought, that's kind of clever. Script wise, it just doesn't really go there.
Right. Or maybe they
wise
planted the seed for that and then didn't get a chance to develop it. Like
it's possible.
I feel like there's a lot of good energy, a lot of good ideas in the room. And then there was like a limited amount of where they could take it.
Yes.
So
yes,
we got like a lot of people doing, we got a lot of choreographers like doing their best job, and like everyone, like I did enjoy like the very first time Shen and Wendy's brother fight in the house. So that felt like, I was like, oh, the choreography is so cool here, because it felt like a traditional like a Chinese tea house. They're messing up the entire tea house with the way the stairwell and the upper landing are shot. And I was like, someone thought carefully about how this house looked and how it would look in this fight scene. And I liked there are elements of like where you get that like wuxia, like fun, like flying on top of treetops, like this style that was like, it in a lot of like Chinese martial arts movies where it's just given. People fly when they do kung fu. Like they, and they like do ridiculous things, but it's very graceful, it's very flowing. But there's moments here where how it's edited, where it comes off as like awkward and weird. Like when they put Wendy's phone on top of the lamppost, and then she like does the move to go get it. I'm like, that just looks weird. Like how, how is it physically possible? I mean, yes, I believe it's physically possible, but it also looked incredibly weird. But when she did that move later during like the big battle, it looked cool.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
because it was like filmed with more fluidity. I don't know. There's moments with like the like they do these like flying on the treetops moves with the first fight scene in the house where, oh my God, and the music for the very first fight scene. And throughout the whole movie, I'm like, why?
I want to add to that because that was bothering me so much in the fight in the tree. I love that you totally nailed it. It's absolutely a tea house fight scene. Absolutely a tea house fight scene that happens to Shen and Wendy's brother Peter. And it's like, but you're right, the music bothered the hell out of me. That scene, I realized what was messing me up in that scene is that like that scene, the whole point is that they're fighting as quietly as possible to not wake up Wendy or the people in the house. And what was bothering me was realizing that music just doesn't really fit the fight. And then the sound design doesn't really make it better. The sound design should really enhance the fact that they're trying to be quiet. You know, it should really, like, you should hear squeakings of the chair. You should hear mild creaks whenever they mildly hit things to really emphasize that they're trying their best to be as quiet as possible. There are no sounds of the kickings and the swingings and the punches in here, even if it's like muted ones, which I think would have added to that. Because I think that was like halfway through, I went, oh, this is kind of a neat idea. They're having this fight scene, but they're trying to be quiet. And it's this amazing choreography, but everything else is failing them. You know, the editing, the sound mixing, the music. And it
felt very dissonant. Like the music was like, we are here to give you big serious fight scene, right? And it's like deeply like, look at the like cool like martial arts moves that are being showcased here between this brand new character we've just introduced you, because it's literally the first time we see Shen get to like show his stuff. And also like, you know, the villain who's possessing, you know, Wendy's brother. But also there's like a dissonance between like, are you trying to be funny? Because there are a lot of comedic moments, like the fish that fall out of the tank, and then he like catches the fish and puts them back. But that's really funny. But we don't get an opportunity to laugh at it because the whole scene is just like it's also a very long fight scene too.
It is,
and it is, you know, like when I think about like my favorite funny fight scene, I think of like really old school Jackie Chan movies where it is hilarious, right? And it's a well choreographed fight scene. It's very tightly edited, but you can see how funny it actually is. Like, you know, like I'm doing this whole fight scene while being handcuffed to the steering wheel. Like I'm doing this like, and like then it becomes a part of the fight and it becomes an element, and he's like trying to escape the whole time, or like, you know, he's trying to prevent this thing from being broken. Like, oh, here's this like ancient vase that I'm like, you know, we're tossing it back and forth, and he saves it the entire fight scene, and then the end of the fight scene it breaks anyways. And like there's a lot of like nods to like I do like when you're playing soccer, I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is like, I think, was this after Shaolin Soccer came out?
Yeah. Totally after Shaolin Soccer.
Yeah, and I love that movie, and I was just like, oh my god, is she's gonna use kung fu in soccer? This would be really fun. And we don't get to see like I don't know, develop Wendy's passion for soccer. Like, do we see her as a serious soccer player? We only see her at this one practice. Are there games? And we don't. There's like elements of like she's popular because they tell us that she is popular. Like we don't see her interact with people much beyond like her two friends.
That's true.
And her boyfriend.
Like, what does it mean beyond like, and then like her like high school rival person. And like there's room here because, you know, Disney says a lot of things about like in, you know, I see a common thread in their movies, which I enjoyed as a teenager because they like to like, oh, like if you're an outcast, that's okay. Like if the popular people pick on you, like you know, everyone has their own problems, and like, you know, you can like walk a mile in someone else's shoes and understand what they've been through. And that's a common theme in like Disney Channel movies that does. I think that this one didn't get a lot of time.
No. Like low key, the whole thing felt very rushed as we talk about a lot of different elements of it. Like as we talk about like the mooncake scene and like that, and the fact there was only one Asian American writer in the room. So again, he probably came in at the last minute, was only able like to do so much. And then like you even look at like the music that's used in the movie. Like y'all were noticing the music for the fight scenes. I was looking for the music for just like the regular just like dramatic areas where they're just acting and hanging out. Like for example, at the mall scene, I was like, the hell is this terrible ass song? And then I Shazammed it. It was a song by Orlando Brown. I was like, what the hell? Because here's the thing. Disney Channel gets their stars to sing songs, but there's tiers to this. Because like Raven Simone, Billboard gets some hits or whatever. Ali and AJ were on at the time. They be putting out hits and stuff like that. When you get Orlando Brown, that was like, yo, we scraping the bottom of the bell right here, y'all. And so with the fact that he got a song here, and y'all couldn't get like any of your other top stars to do any music for this, it was just like, yeah, it doesn't feel like y'all trying. And going into like the fight scenes that we're talking about, that is like, again, there were times where like they were okay, but Justin, quick question. Was this the director's like the fight choreographer? Was this one of his like first projects? Like, was he still early in his career here?
No. This is by this point, like he's already done a bunch of films. He's already done Power Rangers for many seasons at this point. So, I mean, I can't even put all the blame on him. Again, at the end of the day, he just did the fight choreography. He didn't direct it.
No, yes. And I bring that up because, like, again, going to Power Rangers, what's the magical season called? Power Rangers. Mystic Force literally has.
I hate that I know that off the top of my head.
That's why we boys. It literally has some of the best fight scenes. It's literally considered one of like the lesser tier Power Ranger series, but it's known for one of the better fight scenes that again he worked on during this like Disney Channel era. They're putting this out. Yeah, it just feels like with this movie they cut corners in a lot of different areas.
No, I agree.
It is. Yeah, I think it, you know, as I learn more as an adult, I'm like, there's so many people involved in making a film, and there's so many layers of like everyone has a certain part, and maybe they don't get to see the big picture. Like maybe they're told that like, hey, this is going to be a part of like something really cool, and you can and people have to fight for like, you know, I fought to have the mom talk about her heritage in this way. I fought to have the dad like acknowledge that this happened, or I fought to have, you know, this conversation happen in Mandarin. And there's elements here that I you know, majorly want to give kudos to everyone who worked on the film, to like, I'm going to try my best. Like this may be strange to me, that I may be playing a character that might not be my background, but I'm going to give it my all and try to make a good enjoyable film out of this. And there's solid things in it, and like, could they have done better? Sure. But you know, at the time, with the resources that they had, like what is the scale here? I don't think like, you know, your whole podcast is about like, is like, I don't think that that's a question that can be answered because it's so variable, right?
Yeah.
And what does it mean when we say that? Like, are we talking about their entire catalog of titles? Are we talking about at a specific time? Are we talking about now? Are we talking about then? Like, how hard was it for this idea to make it past the pipeline? And like, maybe I don't know, like I think about myself as a writer, and some people are like, oh, this didn't feel Asian enough, like you need to add more gongs. I'm like, okay, fine, I want this to be made, I'll add more gongs, I'll make it, you know. And like there's parts, like, you know, parts of the story that feel Asian American to me, that like, you know, resonate with like, oh, the struggle between defining yourself and also having like, you know, struggling to reconcile the past and the present.
Yeah. That
we get to see, you know, I loved getting to see like Wendy and her grandma like spend time together. We could love to see more of that. And that, you know, that, yeah, there's a lot here. And had they had opportunity for a sequel, maybe they could have explored it more.
Yeah. Well, and actually, at least a question as we get ready to wrap up. Closer for both of you, why do y'all think we didn't get a sequel? Because as I read off like the information earlier, it had like 5.7 million viewers when it premiered. Those are great numbers. It broke records overseas in the United Kingdom, in Japan, and a few other places. Like, it was really well received, and there are plans for a sequel, but they just never kind of followed through. And it's funny because when I discovered this, it kind of reminded me of of this discussion we had on one of our previous episodes that you brought up, Justin, is that a lot of times we see Asian American projects, they get to this point where it's like they get the success, like Crazy Rich Asians or another movie like The Joy Luck Club, but they do all this success. You're like, oh, cool, now you're going to follow it up. But then they don't follow it up with anything. They kind of like go back, and then it's years before we get like another project featuring Asian actors or whatnot. So just question, like, what do y'all think? Like, why do you think the reason is we possibly did get a sequel to this?
I feel like this isn't in quite the same category as like Joy Luck Club.
You're saying,
and mostly because like I think the creative team, like this is a film where obviously like the director is an Asian. There's only one Asian American. There was only one Asian writer in this production. So I feel like this is one of those cases where I legitimately don't know. It's really weird. I'll agree with you. Like it's a film that clearly did pretty well, and like other lesser Disney Channel movies got a sequel, and this is one where you can easily spring out a sequel concept. You know, Wendy and Shen has to fight another evil bad guy. You know, there are easy places to go for a follow-up. I don't know. I mean, it could, you know, could be Brenda was done. I don't know. I have no clue. There's a lot of factors coming in, but I also feel like it's a shame because I feel like one more would have been nice. You know, like get a new director or the same director who have learned their lessons. I don't know, but like this of all the ones, like, you know, like we know there's a Johnny Tsunami too, and we're gonna watch it at some point. But after the first one, I'm like, I'm not sure what does he snowboard another hill? What does he do? You know, like the sequel options are kind of less on that one to me. But here, like Wendy Wu, it's like fight another bad guy. You know, maybe a female villain next time, maybe another god or some sort of evil demon, something, anything. There's a lot to go, especially when you come up with some really fun ideas that this film had. So a sequel wasn't the issue. Coming up with an idea for a sequel isn't the issue. It's just for some reason, like it just fell apart. And I'm perplexed. I have no idea what the reason could have been.
They have so much to work with, right? Because they have like, it seems clear that the warrior is reincarnated. Is the warrior reincarnated throughout her family specifically? Because her great grandma was the last one. So has it always been in her family? And if so, does her family have a memory of it?
Yeah.
You know, like one, just throwing something off the top of my head.
That's
time trap. That's it.
Ooh.
The one, just for funsies, I was just throwing this in my head. Like now, it's like you could do sequences where Brenda plays the various versions of her past descendants.
Yeah.
And what they were throughout history. So you can have her play multiple time period versions of.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Okay, go.
Time travel, but a like version from like ancient times gets transported to the present, switch places with Wendy, and now Wendy is in ancient times. And suddenly Wendy has a Shen that like he doesn't know how she feels about him, and the Shen and the past version of her in the present is like in a relationship with Shen, but she's just like, wait, we're just friends here. I'm confused, but I also have feelings for you, and I don't know what this means.
Nice.
And
nice.
that's why CB got these books coming out, y'all. That's why. Go buy those books. And no, that's great. They should do it. I hope they do it at some point, because it's crazy too, because Brenda Song was like, I looked into it, she was on Disney Channel for another 5 years. This came out in 2006. She was on Sweet Life on Deck till 2011. She was still there. So it's like she's still working for the channel, and you know they'd be having to do all these projects. So she's there. Why not do something with it?
I liked her arc on Sweet Life. That was very, like at the end, you know, and she like learns to drive with the Prindle, and like it felt very sweet to me. Like her character is like an airhead, but it felt very wholesome. That she was like, you know, she had good intentions, and I think her character in that show was like a refreshing, like, you know, you're not a like stereotypical, like, because the stereotype of like the submissive Asian girl who's like there to be like, and I think even like a popular Asian girl is in itself a little bit of a stereotype. Like, okay, you're pretty, you are one of the like mean girls, right? And so you don't get to see a lot of like different, I mean, there's been some, and then there's like, you know, the punk Asian girl with a streak in her hair, and there's, you know, and that in itself is a stereotype, because it's like saying like, because this one is alternative, you are reinforcing that the default is like submissive and meek and shy and dirty, by saying this one isn't like the others. And so we don't get to see a range for like Asian American girls to be like however personality they are, like whether they're angry or loud or, you know, shy or bossy or whatever. And it feels like there's a very specific amount of characters, like personality tropes that they've been fit into, and they weren't quite sure, like, because there's a little bit of like her Sweet Life character in here where she's a little bit airheaded, but then they also were like, you know, she's pretty smart, like she cares about homecoming, so she's like in all these electives, and you know, but yeah, a lot of great things to enjoy in this film.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, and give her props as well for Sweet Life. Love the relationship between her and Mr. Mosby. Like
yes. I was coming to. I was like, oh, at the end, I was like, oh, I teared up because she's like, I'm gonna miss you, Mr. Mosby.
Oh, and thank you for taking care of me all these years.
You are welcome. I am so proud of you for graduating high school, and so proud of the woman that you've become. Keep in touch, okay?
Don't worry, I've got you on speed dial. I'll call you if I ever have a problem.
Okay. Hello?
I have a problem. I'm gonna miss you.
Yeah, and it was like the whole time Mosby's low-key like her black dad in a way, which is like super fucking dope because it defeats that negative stereotype. But at the same time, seeing him like guide London through this whole time, like again, I totally agree with you. She like defeats so many stereotypes. Shout out to London, yay me.
Now I do want to bring up one issue with the film. It is something that kind of just came out relatively recently, of all things, in a TikTok. So I mean, I guess that's 2021 for you. But yes, there is some controversy with the film concerning, you know, the stunt work. Johnny, can you want to tell us what exactly happened?
So it was interesting. As we were like doing research for this film, we discovered that like a TikTok star had discovered that during one of the scenes, it looks like one of the actors for the black teacher who's like, you know, becomes one of her masters later on, who's like teacher of martial arts. At one point during the stunt work, it looks like the stunt actor had been playing in blackface because he was doing a stunt and it looked like a pale skin was like underneath. Come to find out though that pale skin was actually a pad. But when they did like, you know, further deeping, found out they did put somebody in blackface. It wasn't a white person, but it was a Polynesian stunt actor who was working on set. And so the thing about it was though is that like, they kind of came out that and then they found out that they did kind of like darken his skin so that way he would match up with the teacher and everything like that, which kind of led to like a lot of things that we started doing research into about like, is this problematic or not? Because you are putting blackface and you are like and you're not hiring like black actors, like black stunt workers, like to portray this role. And then we started like thinking about talking about it a little bit. Like I know just for myself, when I first heard about it, I was kind of like, I'm not really sure. But then I started thinking about it and reading up. There was this dope Variety article, which I'll drop a link below, where black stunt workers talk about how hard it is for them to get work a lot of times. Because in the stunt industry, there's these two things called painting and wigging. And so painting is when they'll take somebody, a stunt worker, and they'll paint their skin tone to match like whoever actor it is. And it won't matter the race. But then at the same time, they'll also do wigging is when they'll put a wig on a male stunt worker to portray a female actor, which is like, yeah, this becomes problematic because you're not giving opportunities to women and people of color. You're not giving them opportunity to get these jobs and these roles. You're not giving them opportunities because in the same article, it speaks about how like a lot of times stunt workers are given through networking. And it's about who you know, but you can't build a network if you're not actually getting on set, getting these opportunities to do this stuff. That's the reason why stunt work is like kind of done like by the same people over and over again. And so that was kind of something that came out for this film that we discovered as we were doing research into it.
And that's that's the thing, right? Stunt work is the most underrated profession in this industry. You know, the fact of the matter, it's like the Oscars don't have an official best stunt award. Is kind of ridiculous, you know, because stunts are used in every major film production ever. Whether, you know, it's not just action films, it's dramas and what have you. So the idea that like this is a profession that, like as Johnny said, it's a dangerous profession to be a part of because you do need that trust. So it does make sense that like it's a networking thing. You know that person is trustworthy, you know that person is capable and can handle it. So you can feel confident hiring that person to come into your production. But you're right. Because of that, they also don't allow opportunities for everyone else. I don't know how the stunt community is in Auckland, New Zealand. I have no idea. You know, is there a case where there are, you know, I don't know how many, you know, black stuntmen are in New Zealand, especially in 2006. There probably was plenty. We won't know, right? That's still the issue. The fact that they didn't even, you know, the fact that there wasn't one used or wasn't possibly contacted. They feel, but also maybe because they feel more comfortable using their people. I don't know. That's a tricky part.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And
Yeah.
I just say one thing. Shout out to my friend Dorian, because again, when this stuff happens, kind of like we talk about the writers' room about having only one Asian. It's like I ain't about here. We want to try to speak for the whole Black community. So I hit up like the Black Network, was like, "Hey y'all, is this racist or not?" So I spoke to a lot of my friends about this, and one of my friends brought up a good point. He was like, "Yeah, but this is Disney though. Disney knew from the moment they cast that Black actor that they were going to be stunt works. They knew the script ahead of time.
Right.
They had enough time to plan for this. It was like, oh, we need to get a Black stunt worker and fly that helmet out to New Zealand."
Right.
And so that's one of those things. And going back to CB's original point, I back like again, this is 2006 when this is made. It's like if this is made today, we would hope as this issue gets more and more out that they would do better by it. And it kind of goes to the point why we do this podcast is because we want to address these things and put this like in people's minds. So when you see this, when you see these things happening, these mistakes going on, you kind of call it out so they don't make them again.
And I want to bring up, I wasn't really defending the choice.
Oh, you're definitely,
you know,
and it's like it's you know, it is, you know, whose responsibility is it? Like the person who wrote, they're like, oh, it'd be great if like one of the teachers was Black, and then realizing like, okay, part of the story involves that he gets like possessed, and then is that then like technically he's like 1,000-year-old monk possessing this man, and so is his body, and so then you have that whole issue of like, well, then is it racist to have this person portray another person, and like why did you need these like gym teachers and random teachers to do this part in the first place? But or is it for the comedic value, which also has layers in itself? Like, okay, you want these teachers to be doing these, you know, seeing her principal walk on the fence. That's entertaining, right? But there's elements of like, yes, they knew going in that who they wanted to cast. They had the opportunity to write the story in a way where they knew their limitations, right? And so they could write the story in a way where they could like, okay, these are the people we want to cast, and make sure that like, you know, if there's stunt word involved, we can have you know, there's so many actors and stunt people in the world that like you can find someone of the same background where you don't have to go through this process.
Right.
And then you can give that person an opportunity to find work, and people are like, oh, well, there aren't enough XYZ. I'm like, yeah, but how can they get those opportunities if they weren't there, and if you're not hiring them in the first place?
Exactly.
And that's kind of my thing is like, when this is a thing that Hollywood is starting to slowly figure out, because there's an easy mentality of how they were thinking, especially in 2006. You know, like it's a sort of very one narrow-minded way of going, oh, this is how we always do it, this is how we always hire people, this is how it's always been, etc. And I think now we're at a point where enough talk, like what we're doing on this show and multiple other like discussions, etc. I think the conversation is now being heard where it's like, yeah, but you can't do it like this all the time. You do need to give the people the opportunity. And the only way that starts is if you actually start looking. You know, I remember we kind of talked about this when we briefly talked about this for the Mulan remake, which I don't want to bring too many tidal waves of emotions there, but I remember they kept saying like they only offered, you know, they obviously offered to like Ong Lee to direct, and then he said no, and then they went to female directors, to which I went, did you not try to find a Chinese female director to do that film? And they went ahead and found a female director, ironically from New Zealand. But you know, the question is, oh, because what, you just couldn't find one? But then what 2 years later, Kathy Yang's directing Birds of Prey. Chloe Zhao is doing a Marvel movie. So I'm like, how hard did you actually look? You know, did you actually look, or did you just say you looked? You know what I mean? So like, now I think that's just a couple of years ago. Now we're at a point where hopefully these kind of hiring practices are being refreshed and allowing more people with these skill sets to go ahead and do these projects that clearly they could. Like Johnny, you're right. You know, like if they knew they're going to have a principal who's going to be played by an African-American actor in New Zealand, and you know, you had time to look and find a stuntman who could possibly live in New Zealand, who happens to be Black and can do it, and he looks enough like him for wide shots. It's not hard. Well, how hard did you really look? So yeah, no, there's some things that has to be changed, and I you know, certain things currently I'm seeing where I'm like, it looks like we're chipping away at getting there. It's such a long. I wish we got a bigger hammer, if I could be honest. You know, I'm really tired of everyone using something like as big as this to like.
You just have that handy.
I did. It was actually I was actually putting something up on my wall, and I realized I have an opportunity to use a prop in this conversation. So
I was low key waiting for you. It was like, I'm tired of people using this when they should use this. You take out Maldor. Like, oh, where did Maldor come from? Just has it handy. But no,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, because I think the thing about it is, though, is that what people don't understand is that when it comes to this work, it is work. And the thing about it is, though, is that we're going against like several like 100 years of oppression, of like things like that we're working against, and it's going to be hard work and it's going to take time. But as long as we stick to working together and keep pushing through this, we will again get to a place where we're doing right by people. Okay, so now we're going to move to our part of the show. We're going to go ahead and rank this movie. Is either woke, meaning that it's inclusive, it's doing a lot of great things, progressive, waking, which means it's like, it's doing some stuff, but it makes several misstep, or sleep as shit, which is like, oh shit, y'all, this set us back. So we're going to take a break right now, and we'll see you right back after this.
Now on Disney DVD. For thousands of years, the Yen warriors have sworn to defeat an ancient evil force. Now, it's time for a new warrior to face her destiny, and there's only one place they'll find the chosen one. The mall.
Oh my gosh, it's so awesome.
Meet Wendy Wu. She's pretty, she's popular,
And everyone's gonna vote for you for homecoming queen.
but first, she's got a date with destiny.
You must follow in the steps of your ancestors. It is your turn to defeat Yang Lo.
You know, Yoda, this is already getting a little too Star Warsy for me.
Can this pampered princess transform herself into a kung fu queen?
This could be fun.
It's time to show the world what the Wu can do.
Now it's my turn.
And check out all the bonus features that really pack a punch, including a never-before-seen alternate ending, a behind-the-scenes featurette, and more. The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody's Brenda's song is Wendy Wu, Homecoming Warrior, now available on Disney DVD.
Woo! What's up, everybody? So we're back, and right now we have our ratings where we would rank this as woke, waking, or sleep. Okay, so we're gonna put our rankings on the screen on 3. Okay, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oh,
Oh, 3
at
rankings.
that.
Look at you, Drew. Like, what you draw?
Oh, you drew them. I should have drawn them. I should have drawn a mooncake. You drew a mooncake.
Oh, nice. I do
And a bow and some shoes.
Oh,
I feel like, okay, if I were writing the scene, the dinner scene,
Mm-hmm.
I would have had them make like xiaolong bao,
Yeah.
because that is like a delicious thing that you know takes a lot of time and energy, but it is cool and you can make it at home. You don't need a fancy machine or a fancy press. And it would have been something that like a dinner guest could have made to like impress the family. And then the mom or dad could have been like, oh yeah, I have a childhood memory about this. So I'm like, even like, so grandma, this is 2006, right? 3 generations. So grandma came over in like the 60s, 50s.
Yeah,
50s.
yeah.
50s.
Probably 50s. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's real. Yeah, and like you can imagine, you can eat like a big bite of a bao, and like because your point how you're like there's a sliver. Because you're right, mooncakes are very rich, so a sliver of mooncake can be realistic, but they're like eating huge bites of mooncake.
like xiaolong bao is the soup dumplings.
Yeah. Oh, the xiaolong bao. My bad. Yeah. That's
Or you
the
can
fancy.
have like, you can even make like the big poofy bao with like the big like baked
With the
like, rice flour ones with
right.
the big fillings.
But you're
Those
totally
are
right.
good.
Xiaolong baos will be like extremely fancy for people to eat because it's like these little.
Right, because you gotta like make the soup and then you gotta freeze the soup and then you take. This is how you get the soup in the dumpling.
Yeah.
You like freeze the soup and then you like make the filling, right? So you have your meat mixture filling and then you like take the frozen soup and then you put it in the meat mixture and then you steam it. So then when it's cooked, the soup becomes soup and it's like inside the dumpling. That's how they get the soup in there. Yeah.
Oh.
There's like fancy places where they'll even give you like a straw to drink the soup out of the dumpling.
Oh, I've been to those. There's even a whole art on how you eat those properly. Or like how everyone does their own style, but like that's kind of a controversial like debate.
I low-key swear this month has low-key also turned to food month because every episode we end up talking about food and learning about new dishes.
Oh, it's good. Food is great. And there's a lot of great like conversation about like what makes a food. Like I think the immigrant mentality of specific food, like when you look at like there's a lot of interesting food that have developed specifically because of immigrant culture that like has access to certain ingredients that in a new place where they didn't have access to before, but they have like this recipe. So like, I don't know, people always bag on Panda Express. I'm like, dude, like, no, like the leaf, like General Tso's chicken and like orange chicken, that shit is like Asian American legit. Like that evolved because like like Chinese people came over in like the 1800s and they were cooking and they developed dishes to like appeal to white people, but also they were like, this is how they stayed in business. So like the whole, like, you're not going to find this dish in China because it's specifically like an American immigrant thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like Italian American food is different from Italian food because it's like, you know, all of that food is like, you know, they had access to like different cuts of meat and like stuff that was really expensive in Italy. But now they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this really cool sauce that's all meat.
No, you're right. Yeah, because it's like when you think about other cultures and whatnot, like African American, like again, it's all comes from Africa, like, you know, the remnants that we hold on to and whatnot. But it's been influenced by like a lot of things that we have over here and whatnot. So the roots are still there, but it's like evolved and changed over here. You see that a lot in New Orleans, which is a mosh podge of several different cultures with Creole, like Native American, like all these things mixing together and whatnot, French. So yeah, that's a great point. Thanks, CB. That's dope.
Yeah. I could do a whole episode on food. We ever just want to talk about food? You got me. We can go. Like, you want to do this podcast in person where we go out and eat food? I'm game.
If you
we
know,
might be doing
like,
that. We might be doing that.
If you know a really good Xiaolong Bao place, or you're like a place okay, so we're doing this.
I also know. Wait, Justin, are you Filipino?
I am Filipino. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know Parks Finest?
Oh yeah.
We should eat there. We could do a whole food tour of LA of like all the food we want to eat.
Johnny, Parks Finest is amazing. So like,
it's like Filipino style American barbecue, but it's like incredible.
Are you
okay? We'll
all right. Mouth is watering. We're
gonna do this.
I'm low key going to Jollibee for the first time today. I was gonna tell you later, but I'm going to Jollibee. Yeah, so I'm really excited. I'm so excited.
Listen, you're gonna get the chicken joy.
I'm getting the chicken. I'm getting the spaghetti. Justin's been hyping up the spaghetti.
Okay, but spaghetti, you got to be careful. You know, like spaghetti's sweet. That's the thing that some people don't dig. So I'm warning you. But dude, get the chicken. Get the chicken. If you want spicy, get it spicy. But get the chicken. There's a reason it's called Chicken Joy for a reason. All right.
All right. I will get this. By the way, but CB, so why'd you give it Waking?
Yeah.
Oh.
We got distracted. Bro, like. Food plus diversity is the next show.
There it is.
Yeah. I thought they did a great job with the resources they had, and you know, clearly there are a lot of great elements here where they can discuss, like, you know, navigate different issues of identity, and we get to see, you know, an Asian American heroine. You know, I felt like there's like more nuance that you could bring to like different layers of identity, and also like, you know, pay more attention to the casting and be more intentional about what you're doing. But you know, for you know, 2006, like the intention of the film, and I think like the bringing of it, like, does it perpetuate harm? I don't, you know, it has like some awkward moments, but I think they're definitely trying, and overall I think it is a solid film and it's enjoyable to watch.
For sure. Just, I'll let you get the last word. For me, I gave it Waking. And I drew my people over there, like doing the kung fu flying, kicking and everything like that. And then I put on here, make a sequel and hire Brenda Song, because those are my takeaways from it. Because honestly, like, I've always liked Brenda Song. Like, ever since like Sweet Life, I was like, dude, like, you're really good. You're a really good actress. She was hilarious on that show. And then I see her in other stuff and she's always good. But I'm like, dude, why didn't she get more work? And I just wish that she would get more opportunities. And I'm looking at Disney Channel particularly here, because that's the reason why I gave it Waking, because I'm like, you had this hit movie. It did so well, but you didn't make a sequel. And it's like, why? Like, again, you dropped an opportunity here to kind of like advance and put another Asian American story out there, to like put more things, to build this. And it was, who knows what it would have grown into. So that's part of the reason I gave it Waking. It was disappointing there. Also, as we discussed, there's a lot of nuggets of like really dope stuff here. Talking about like the immigrant experience, that was dope quotes from Grandma. A lot of these that stick out with me, but they never kind of like get a chance to really explore it or go in depth with it. But again, though, it does pass a lot of my text though. It does pass the Bechdel test because we have a lead female heroine who's having a conversation with other women about things that aren't related to like men or anything like that. And it does pass the Wire test. CB, for me, the Wire test is when you have people of color that have conversations that aren't about white people. And so it passes that because, again, we got people of color all throughout, from the teacher to our own family and everything like that. So it works out. So, but again, though, I give it Waking because I would love to see them, like, again, it's like what you could have done with this afterwards, with a sequel and building this and like actually continue the story, because there's missed opportunities there, not just for storytelling, but for, again, people's jobs and careers and so forth.
I gave it Waking. It's interesting because, you know, of all the stuff we've been watching this month, I think we gave it woke to almost everything we've seen. And what's interesting to me is realizing, why did I give this one like a very instinctual Waking? I feel like the only reason I gave it a Wake is that, like, it's so awkwardly incorporates these really great ideas that we've all discussed, especially the stuff with the parents, but they kind of feel awkwardly thrown in there, and it feels like the message is muddled. And I think that kind of bothers me because it doesn't really make it clear what story we're really focusing on. The stuff with the parents is great, but isn't this Wendy's story? Why doesn't she have any of those emotional stuff that we're talking about? And it's like all the intentions are right. I feel like the fact that you're even attempting to try to explore cultural identity through the second gen parents is something that I rarely see in a mainstream, let alone Disney project. So that's great. I just kind of wish you knew what that meant when you were exploring that in the script. And that's just one element. And it's like the movie has like all these multiple things that, like, that's good, that's good, that's good. I just wish you knew where you were going with this stuff. And you focused on that. All the other ones we've talked about, they've been focused. You know, whether the cultural concepts are not as correct as others, they still seem focused. And here it's like, I'm giving it almost like an A for effort, but it's like a B+, you know?
Yeah, the whole, like, I think also, like, there's so many themes, like the theme of homecoming too is the idea. Like, it's a football, we never even get to go to homecoming. We never see the football
oh my
game.
God.
We see her in the dress. I think, like, what would have, like, and I understand that what they were going for were like, oh, she sacrifices her crown, she decides she doesn't need it anymore. But, like, cannot she have it all? Can't she also she can be crowned homecoming queen and also defeat the bad guys, right? And, like, you know, there's and I would have loved, like, actually seeing her show up to homecoming in her outfit, right? But in the traditional outfit.
I was waiting on that.
And have her friends and people like, oh, that's a great dress, that's a great outfit, like, I love this look on you, and have them recognize that, like, oh, like, this isn't like the modern tradition, you know, modern, I say modern. I loved also seeing, like, this is very 2000s. This is
super. Shen's outfit is like he came out of a Backstreet Boys music video, and I kind of dig it.
Yeah, just like all the, like, oh my God, the skirt on top of the jeans thing.
Yes.
But like the element of like the idea of being an outsider is so pervasive in a lot of immigrant identity. And then you guys brought up Iron Fist earlier. I haven't seen the series, but one of the things I felt like the show missed out on the opportunity to do was casting. Like, if you cast an Asian American in that role and have him travel back to a country that he has never known, that he has origins to and ties, then that makes him an outsider, and yet, like, you know, he has that nuanced experience. And so you could, there's an element here where you could do that with Wendy. We don't really see her examine her, like, what is this person who I'm supposed to be, like, what does that mean to me, that I am both myself and I am also, like, thousands of history of this warrior from a place. Like, does she still have connection to it? Does she have a new connection to it now? And, like, I would, like, we get to see the parents have an idea of identity, and then there's that one line where the mom is like, or the dad is like, because they're so interchangeable, like, where they're like, oh, I don't think Wendy will get anything out of this, like, the brother learned this cool move, and, you know, our, you know, mom got to, like, hang out with someone, and you got to, like, enjoy this piece of your childhood, but, like, what will Wendy get out of this? And I'm like, we don't see that answered, other than she, like, you know, feels good about saving the world, and she has Shen at the end of it. But like she never, we don't see the film acknowledge, like, what does it mean to her? Like, I would like take it one more line where she's like, no, I don't want to be homecoming queen, or like, no, I am a warrior, no, I have this heritage and I'm proud of it, or I also I have this heritage and I'm both that and also who I am now. Like, I am the result of multiple cultures coming together that make me who I am.
Like something really cute at the end they could have done is like when they're off getting mooncakes or whatever. Like grandma like can see them heading off together and was like, where are you going? He's like, oh, I guess we're just gonna go with you guys. Like, don't you have a dance to go to there? And that could just lead her.
Yes, we want that. Like the ending felt choppy because I'm like, we spend this whole movie talking about homecoming and then we never go there. I'm like,
right,
come on, show me the party. I want the party.
Right.
And lucky she's a homecoming warrior too, which is like, why did y'all do like the battle scene at homecoming? Like movies have done that before in the past, where homecoming's a big culmination of stuff. We were fighting around and all these different things. Like that would have been super dope to see. You got the cast to do it with too.
I wonder if that's a budgetary thing and they lost money around that point, and that's why it's still.
You can't have the fight scene on the dance floor.
Yeah, we had
to have like those hundreds of actions. It would have been cool though.
It would have been cool. Like imagine all those terracotta warriors at the school, like the other her rival. She was already in her dress. I almost feel like that's actually what happened. It was scripted to be at homecoming, and then they were like, "We don't got no money. I guess this takes place in the museum."
Wait, and that's a good question too, though, because why did her rival have on the dress? Because she was possessed at the pool party. So why would she go and change into the homecoming dress?
Like that would make sense if she was in the homecoming dress at homecoming, and then she brings out these monster terracotta warriors. Shoot, I think that's what happened. I think he ran out of cash. And
yeah, low key. But but with that said though, like again, it's been dope having you on, CB. Before you go ahead and bounce, anything you want to plug real quick?
You can pre-order A Clash of Steel now, and that's out September 7th. And you can also look for the 5th anniversary edition of Not Your Sidekick, which is also out in September. And check out all my other work, and definitely watch all the episodes to see all the fun and maybe a future food episode.
Man, Justin, this is the first time we ever got bothered by the Disney Corporation. We actually
I know
the whole episode.
This is the first time you have not what?
Normally we like in our show we'll have like a worry that someone from Disney is gonna knock on our door or like kind of open and like try to kidnap us.
Justin? Oh gosh, guys, as you can see, I'm back in the closet. They got Justin! Okay, so as always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. Please help us out. Help us get to 100 subscribers so we get Justin back.